You know, AMD really has made some good cards over the time. Back from the time when, even when they were ATI, but when they, yeah, things like, I don't know, the R7 and R9s, the RX 480 and 580, yeah, and even nowadays, the RX 7900, the 7900 XT, XTX, whatever you want to call it. Some of the new ones, the 9070 and the 9070 XT, are not too bad, from what I understand. But what about the 6000 series? Y'all remember that 6600 XT? Yeah. Me too.
Now, some of you guys might have said, yeah, I've got one of those cards. It's in a build somewhere or whatever. And some of you guys might have said, I don't, they either don't remember, didn't use, didn't have, didn't see, forgot, whatever the case is. You can kind of insert me into several of those categories. I do have one. I have used it. It is currently, well, now it's in a testing rig, or just being, it's moved around in a couple of testing rigs. But most recently, it had been sitting in a rig that had not moved off my shelf in a little while because I haven't done a whole lot of traveling around, mainly because of work. So, in any case, yeah, several of those apply. I do have it, haven't been using it, kind of forgot it was in there, and so hence the reason. Now, I recently did a video on the RTX 3060. I'll go ahead and leave a link to it up at the top up here. I also did involve some of my testing with the 3060 Ti with the 7500F. Yeah, I'll leave that up here as well. But what I was doing here is I thought, since I had the 7500F out and I have not tested that card, I was going to go ahead and test that with the 7500F and with the 12700KF. I didn't get to the KF yet. I didn't get to the Intel build yet. I will eventually. But then I was presented with some other ways of looking at this, because with the video with the RTX 3060, which up until recently was the most popular card on Steam, the most popular video card on Steam, it actually performs, well, we'll take a look. But the 3060 with 12 gig of VRAM doesn't perform as well as the 3060 Ti. We kind of figured that. 3060 Ti is a better card, but I was kind of torn which one to compare it to, because it might look really, really good compared to one, and maybe not so good compared to the other, but in actuality, it just kind of fits right in between them. So we'll go ahead and switch to some numbers here, and I really was conflicted also about whether I should show against one or the other, and whether I should show 1080p numbers or 1440p. Obviously, I was going to show 1440p numbers, but I thought maybe that would just be it. But I don't know if that really tells the whole story, and I probably need to show both in 1080p, low, medium, and high, and 1440p and low, medium, high. I don't think anybody's going to be using this card at 4K. We're probably not going to do a lot of video rendering with this card, even though it has an AV1 decoder. It does not have the encoder, so it doesn't have the advantage that the Intel graphics card might have. And these 3060s don't have either one. So it makes no sense to try to show encoding, except for the fact that the NVENC encoder on the NVIDIA product, we know is absolutely superior. Ray tracing is absolutely superior. So we're not going to compare those. We're just looking at just plain old rasterization. How well, how quickly, how consistently it can put an image on your screen, and what kind of average frame rate it affects by doing that. So we went ahead. We are using the 7500, the Ryzen 5 7500F in an AM5 platform. We're using 6,000 megatransfers per second DDR5 memory, 32 gig of that. And we're testing all three cards. Some of it we've been testing because we were testing that chip anyway, that CPU anyway. And now we've added the 6600 to it. That's going to be a little bit confusing at first. The light green is going to be the 3060, dark green will be the 3060 Ti, and the AMD card will be red. Kind of turns out right in the middle. And so with that thought in our head, let's go ahead and kind of get things started here with Shadow of the Tomb Raider 1080p. We see that the 3060 Ti does have a clear advantage over both of them in high and medium, but the 6600 does okay in 1080p low. Still decent looking. The story is a little bit different when we get to 1440 because both cards beat it in 1440 high, but it starts to settle out by the time it gets to low. Still, the 3060 we know is going to be better, and this AMD card is fitting right in between these two, probably right where it should. Moving on to Borderlands 3 and 1440, this showed the AMD card pretty well keeping up, at least to begin with the 3060 Ti, and really beating the 3060 pretty soundly here. This result surprised me just a little bit after seeing Shadow of the Tomb Raider numbers. I wasn't expecting it to be quite this close, but at least in 1440, it's pretty close. And then when we go to look at 1080, the AMD card actually ekes out a little bit of a victory here against the 3060 and the 3060 Ti. Well, it really soundly beats the 3060, but it does eke out a little bit of a victory over the 3060 Ti, maxing out at over 200 frames per second, which is not bad. These were DX12. I didn't go back and do DX11 numbers because for me, there was no sense in doing that. 11 and 12 have gotten so close now, I'm just doing everything in DX12. For those of you that don't know, sometimes video cards, sometimes they do run a little bit better in DX11 than 12, but I wanted to run with a more modern API, so that's what I've done here. With Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440, I left it on to the default FSR, which, interesting enough, it defaults to FSR for the NVIDIA cards as well, instead of using any kind of DLSS, and so that's where I left it, as the default setting. I think it defaults right into the middle setting for as far as quality is concerned, so I didn't change any of that. I just went ahead and went with the straight default setting for all of these, which happens to be FSR 2.1. A little bit closer at 1080p, but not by much, and really pretty much what you'd expect out of this. Black Myth Wukong, I went ahead and tested that. I've started adding it to my benchmarks. I'm right now only testing in 1080p high and 1440p high, because I think I'm going to change some of my benchmarking. I don't want huge charts full of a bunch of information, but since I already had that going, I went ahead and completed that for the other ones. For this, it's just 1440 and 1080p high, and pretty predictable results. I was a little bit surprised that the AMD card did as well as it did with the 7500, especially seeing that the RTX 3060 scored the highest I've seen so far, and smooth frame rates and everything looked really, really good. But 129 for the 3060 Ti, and the AMD card following it right up, the 6600 XT, right up there, almost nuzzled up against it at 119. And then, of course, they soundly beat the 3060. I can't say I'm surprised about that, but at least it's not the Intel card, because I believe when we were testing the Intel card, it was in the 70s or something like that. It was way back. So we know this is much better. All three of these cards are better than even the B570 that I was able to lay my hands on recently. Finally, our Counter-Strike 2, our esports title, and these really, this also surprised me, but it surprised me with the results I got, because at 1440p high, the 6600 XT was almost the same frame rate, or I think right at the same frame rate as the RTX 3060. But by the time we got to 1080p high, the 6600 was the same frame rate as the 3060 Ti. So it bounced from one to the other, and it was a little bit confusing there. But you know, it is what it is, and I can't really complain. All three of these cards are at 1080p, especially over 200 frames per second. All of them in the high hundreds, or at least the upper end of the hundreds when we're sitting at 1440. Very smooth, very playable. I didn't have any kind of issues. No issues with temperatures, not even in the closed off case, because I haven't put more fans in there, and I thought there might be a little bit, but there isn't. But I did think it was fair to test this the same way as I tested the other two cards, which was in the original fan configuration that I tested the 7500 with in the first place. So I didn't want to change that yet while I was testing the 6600 XT. I don't know how much difference it would make. Maybe it might be a little bit cooler, and we might eke out another frame per second. But as far as this test, all three of these cards were tested the same way, in the same box, in the same setup, with the same memory and the same CPU and everything. So yeah. So what's my conclusion here? Well, considering that the 3060 Ti is still, I mean, it's a great card, but it's still fairly expensive. The 3060 is still a good card and it's less expensive. And you can get the 6600 XT used for around, I don't know, 180 or so, 180 to 190. And it'll cost you a little over 200 if you can find it brand new. Some places still do have this brand new for some reason. Even though they're on the 7 series now and actually working on the 9 series, some places you can still end up buying this 6600 XT. And if you can get a hold of a brand new one for, say, 219 or something, it's still pretty good. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty good deal. Used, if you're gonna choose between, say, $190 used and 200 something, 210 or something like that, brand new, I'd splurge for the extra few bucks to get the brand new one. But yeah, that's just me. Now, overall, if you've got the patience and you go ahead and lay your hands on a 3060 Ti, that's probably your best bet. Does have a better encoder, does have better ray tracing, but this 6600 is not a bad card. Wasn't a bad card when it came out, still not a bad card now. I guess we're going to have to wait for, say, the 9600 XT to see how that compares to this card. But the 7600 we know is a little bit more, but also a little bit more expensive. And right now, video cards are very, very hard to find. Who knows? If you're looking for a video card, and especially if you're looking for something that still has decent performance at a decent price, if nothing else, then to hold you over, it's not a bad way to go. Anyway, that is all I got this time. I just wanted to kind of, while I was testing the other cards, I remembered that this was in here, and considering my possibilities, just seeing what I might end up putting in there, and how things were going to play with each other, how well they were going to play with each other. And I realized that I didn't have any numbers whatsoever, not only on the 7500F, but I never tested it with my editing rig either. I never stuck it in there with the 12700. So that's the one that I will check next. There might not be a video on that, but I am going to test. Just make sure I've got full numbers on this 6600. Yeah, so that decent price, decent card. It's worth it still, a couple years later. And if cards are still going to be difficult to get a hold of, maybe it's a pretty good option for you. So if you got anything out of the video, found it helpful, entertaining, just feel bad for me or whatever, throw a like on the video if you don't mind. It certainly would help. If you're not already subscribed, please do. That'd be great. YouTube did a little bit of funny thing recently with my subscriber count, and it kind of dipped back down. It's going back up again, which is great. But I seriously appreciate everybody that's clicked that little button, because at one time or another they thought something I said was entertaining or important, or just didn't mind clicking a button. So if you don't mind doing that, go ahead. And if you don't, if also you're in the mood, go check out some of my socials. I stream on that Purple channel a couple times a week and have other things going on too. But if you don't do any of that stuff, I just have one favor, and that's be good to each other. Be kind. Smile, wave, hold the door open, say good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be. Just a little bit of kindness, a little bit of polite goes a long way. You could be the reason somebody else has a better day, and it might also make you feel better too. You never know. But in any case, that is all I have for right now. I've still obviously got some stuff sitting on the floor over there that I'm getting to slowly. There are some things I'm working through. I've had some things interject themselves in between, but that's okay. We're still getting through this. And very soon, I'm going to figure out what to do with all those garage sale PCs that I've got. I think I'm going to get a bunch of them working, and we'll just go ahead and donate those to, say, the Salvation Army or Goodwill or something. Sound like a plan? Yeah. We'll get that going again soon, too. Anyway, that is all I have for right now. So until I get myself into something I got no business getting into, I'll see you later.